Hi, everybody. It's Eric Murray from SugarHuddle.com. Well, week 11 of college football is upon us, and it's time for my weekly pick six picks for the week. Pretty decent games this week. Coming into the week, I'm 22 and 26 as far as picking overall winners, and as far as picking against the spread, I'm 20 and 28, but I've actually improved recently, so I'm inching closer back to 500, and hopefully I'll have a winning record before you know it, so we'll see. But anyways, I'm going to go on down the line and tell you what my pick six games are for the week and also give you some predictions thereafter. First game, number 24, Auburn is at number 5, Georgia. They've had some pretty good matchups in the past. Georgia is a 14-point favorite, 2-touchdown favorite at home. My adjusted line, because I add the half point for the full point games, so that my adjusted line would be 14.5 for that one. And I actually think Georgia is going to win that one pretty easily, 34-14. My number 2 game, Michigan State and Ohio State. Number 10, Ohio State is on the road at number 18, Michigan State. That's a noon start time today. And Ohio State is a 3.5-point favorite. I actually think Michigan State, who's won 3 of the last 7, which I know you say, well, Ohio State still won more in the last 7 games, but Michigan State has been a real thorn in Ohio State's side in recent years. Yeah, Ohio State's won the last 2, but Michigan State, this is, a team that, with the way Ohio State's struggling, it's going to be a pretty tough game for Ohio State, and I actually have Michigan State pulling off the upset 27-24. My third game, number 2, Clemson is on the road at number 17, Boston College. Boston College undefeated at home, a really, really tough team. I believe BC is 5-0 at home, and it's 8 o'clock Saturday night game. Who knows what the weather's going to be like. Clemson's still a 19.5-point favorite. I think they will find a way to stay undefeated and improve to 10-0, but I think they barely beat BC 37-31, and there's a key injury possibly in that game that I'm going to get to in a little bit here, so look out for that. And then my fourth game, number 8, Washington State, looking to try to move up in the college football playoff rankings. They're at unranked Colorado, who's on a 4-game losing streak. That's a 3:30 game. Washington State's a 6-point favorite. My adjusted line would make it 6.5. And I think Washington State beats Colorado by a touchdown, barely covering 42-35. My fifth game, Oklahoma State at Oklahoma. Bedlam, obviously, as we all know. Oklahoma State lost last week to Baylor 35-31, so they've been hit or miss in recent weeks after that big win over Texas. Number 6, Oklahoma, they barely beat Texas Tech, but anyhow, they're still in the driver's seat to possibly make the college football playoff, depending on what happens in front of them in the standings. Anyways, the 6th-ranked Sooners at home, obviously always a tough out at home. They're a 21-point favorite for this 3:30 start time. My adjusted line obviously would make it 21.5, so just over 3 touchdowns. And then my 6th and final game is a pretty crucial Big Ten West game. It's Northwestern at number 21, Iowa, and the 21st-ranked Hawkeyes host this 3:30 ball game. They're a 10.5-point favorite, but whereas I have actually, by the way, well, I'll go back to it in a second. But anyways, I have Iowa beating Northwestern 21-16 in a tight game. But I wanted to mention the Oklahoma State-Oklahoma game. That's my big intriguing game of the weekend. I actually have Oklahoma State 3-touchdown underdog beating Oklahoma 49-45, and I'll tell you why in a little bit here. But anyways, so those are the games, and now I want to go on down the line and kind of just break each down real quick. Auburn allowing a little over 28 points a game. Scoring a little over 28 points a game. They only allow about a little over 17. They're a team that really struggles badly on third downs, but then defensively they only allow 32.2% on third downs. So they struggle on third downs, but they're really good at stopping third downs. Jared Stidham, who's supposed to be one of the NFL quarterback prospects and what's right now a down quarterback class. He's a guy who's been kind of hit or miss in his time at Auburn, but this year, kind of just a game manager, barely completing 60%, less than 7.5 yards an attempt, 10 touchdown passes is all he has. Only has 4 picks, 10 touchdowns, 4 picks, just 132.2 rating. On the ground, Auburn, 155 rushing yards per game, which, some teams that would be like, it's not too bad, depending on your offense. But with Auburn, being a run-based team, even with the addition of Stidham, making it more of a pass-friendly team, it's a team that, when they thrive under Gus Malzahn, who's obviously now in just the second year of a 7-year, $49 million deal, and, his future is a little bit in doubt, but they're a team that ideally they want to average well north of 200 rushing yards per game. Like, 250 plus. They're that style team, and obviously, the addition of Stidham, it's good in the sense that they have a more legitimate passer, but as we've seen, it means that you're not as friendly in the run game because when they went to the national title game back in 2013 with Nick Marshall, he was an athlete playing quarterback. He was a runner all the way, and that's kind of the offense that Gus Malzahn runs. So Jarrett Stidham, he's kind of an awkward fit. It's kind of similar to Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State, where he's not really an ideal fit for Urban Meyer's offense, another guy who's not a runner. But anyways, nonetheless, Jarrett Stidham, he's probably not the best quarterback that Georgia's faced, and really, when you think about it, who's Georgia really faced so far? So, as far as quarterbacks go, so well, actually, I take that he probably is the best quarterback Georgia's faced, but that's just not saying much because Joe Burrow struggled, Felipe Franks has struggled, Terry Wilson struggled. So Georgia, they've faced really good teams the last few weeks in a row, not taking away from Georgia at all. But as far as quarterback play, it's going to be interesting down the stretch when they have to eventually play Tua in the SEC title game, and then if they make the playoff, who will they play there? So this will be the best quarterback they've faced thus far, but I think they'll be able to handle Stidham. Jartavius Whitlow, he's a guy that is really, really good in the Washington game, season opener, but still only has like 642 rushing yards. So he's having an okay year. Receiver-wise, Darius Slayton and Ryan Davis, 72 combined catches, 835 yards. But this kind of goes to show you the struggles of this Auburn offense, which, I heard one person on ESPN say yesterday was probably the worst Auburn offense under Malzahn, really struggling. These two guys combined just one receiving touchdown. So those are your two best receivers. Pretty decent collective stats and only one touchdown. So what does that kind of say about your offense? And then defensively, 11 takeaways, not too bad, but they have 29 sacks. Nick Coe is 7. Deshaun Davis, who's a veteran linebacker, he has 85 tackles. Second best on the team is 57. So Deshaun Davis and Nick Coe, those are going to be the two key guys, going up against that Georgia backfield tandem with Holyfield and, of course, DeAndre Swift, who had that big game last week against Kentucky. He had that, an 83-yard touchdown run. Both guys was over 600 rushing yards. So those two guys are going to be key. And really for Auburn, let's face it, again, allowing just over 17 points per game, they're going to have to play a lot of defense in this one. And Jarrett Stidham, he's going to have to really step his game up. So, Stidham, if he can somehow find a way to have a 300-yard type day and the running game kind of overachieves a little bit, then this is going to be a ball game. And like I said, Georgia and Auburn, they've had some pretty good games over the years, but nonetheless, Georgia's just a much better football team right now. Right now, Georgia, 48.6% on third downs. So going up against a strong third down defense, that's going to be a really interesting matchup. I mentioned the running back tandem going up against these Auburn front seven guys. And, they only allow defensively, speaking of Georgia's defense, 33% on third downs. And again, Auburn can't convert a third down. So Auburn's going to have to convert some third downs. Jarrett Stidham is going to have to move the chains a little bit. And, Georgia, they're not an amazing run defense, but they allow 134 rushing yards per game. And, Auburn only averages 155. So, it's one of those things that Auburn's really going to have to play by far their game of the year. And it's the same when they face Alabama in a couple weeks. If they don't play their best football, if Jarrett Stidham doesn't play his best football in what they really need to be a defensive struggle to have any chance to win, it's going to be a Georgia blowout. And that's why I'm predicting Georgia between the hedges at home in Athens. I think they're going to win 34-14. So we'll see if Auburn can find a way to keep them more competitive. But till they run the ball better, till Stidham has a real big game, he's been very hit or miss every week, till they can extend drives on third downs. Remember, Kentucky ended up having a pretty decent day on third downs, but they were struggling early on, and that's when Georgia obviously took control of the ball game. So those are going to be some key things there. Michigan State-Ohio State game, Michigan State, they play Ohio State tough. Really, this game, the thing that really intrigues me the most is going to be the quarterback situation in Michigan State. We know Brian Lewerke's been just an okay quarterback in his time at MSU. Kind of struggled late, and he had the shoulder injury. Of course, he didn't play against Purdue. Rocky Lombardi, the freshman, he plays, has his great game, gets his big win over Purdue. But then last week, Lewerke comes back and he starts again and he struggles. Only had like 87 passing yards. I think it was 11 to 20. Lombardi just got a couple of garbage time passes at the end there, but they won big over Maryland. Maryland's having a decent year. Michigan State handled them. I think it was 24-3 was the final. But nonetheless, Lewerke still banged up shoulder. We know some of his limitations at this point in his MSU career. And, right now you're facing Ohio State defense that, yeah, they have like 26, 27 sacks, something like that. Draymond Jones and some of those guys can still get after the passer, but we also know that the Ohio State defense, they give up their fair share of points. I want to say they give up over 24 a game, something like that. But, yeah, they 27 sacks. But, the thing about it is Rocky Lombardi, yeah, he's a freshman, but you're at home. You got to go with your best quarterback right now. And I know it was only one game for Lombardi, but I think he's a guy who should start in this. Now, it's not set in stone that Lewerke is going to start because, remember, 3 years ago, back in 2015, Connor Cook had suffered a shoulder injury a week before the Ohio State game, and it was said by head coach Mark D'Antonio that, yeah, we're probably going to start him, what have you. And then what ends up happening, the backup ends up starting. They win at Ohio State with a walk-off field goal. So, don't be surprised if Rocky Lombardi starts in this one. But if Lewerke's a starter, I don't feel so great about Michigan State's chances. They don't run the ball very good. They stop the run great, but they don't run the ball very good. And so it's one of those things that if you give the freshman a chance, even if he makes a couple mistakes, this is a game that'd be interesting to see if they play two quarterbacks. And, I don't know. I would start Lombardi, and if he struggles, and you put in Lewerke, but I don't know. I kind of have a feeling they'll start Lewerke. And if he gets off a slow start, then they'll put in Lombardi. But I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do with this whole thing. So that's going to be an interesting factor in it. But I think Lombardi gives them a better chance to win. I think he can do more in the passing game. As far as Ohio State, they get penalized a lot. They average 8 penalties, 72.6 yards per game. So that's going to be something to look for. Kind of an undisciplined team. Rushing wise, 178 yards per game would be good for a lot of teams. But Ohio State, like an Auburn, they're a run-based team, and they're a team that, they like to average 250-plus rushing yards a game. It's just not there this year. 4.5 yards a carry is all they're averaging. Dwayne Haskins has all the touchdown passes, almost 340 yards a game. He's throwing in a lot, and he's going against a Michigan State defense that is so stingy against the run, and they only allow 71.7 yards per game, and it's just one of those things that I think Ohio State, again, they're going to be forced to throw it a lot, and it's going to be interesting to see, how Michigan State is able to get pressure on him and see what their secondary can do. Haskins has been dumping it an awful lot, so it's really going to be about the Ohio State athletes in space going up against this Michigan State defense, and on the other side of it, who's going to play quarterback for MSU and how many points can they put on the board. As we all know, Michigan State's a team that has struggled to consistently score points. Some weeks they can put up the points they need, coupled with the defense they have. In other weeks, they struggle to score points. We know what happened when they played Michigan. So, obviously, I think getting the passing game going for Michigan State, less than you don't have a running game, making sure you can throw it against the struggling Ohio State defense is going to be key. Put some points on the board, help out your defense, keep the ball away from Ohio State a little bit. And then the other side of it, just making tackles, and for Michigan State handling these Ohio State athletes in space. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I think Michigan State can upset them in East Lansing. I think Ohio State's a very, very shaky team. We saw what happened at home against Nebraska last week. A bad Nebraska team, could have easily lost that game if Nebraska didn't make all those mistakes. But nonetheless, we'll see. Ohio State, though, a couple weeks away from Michigan, and they're a shaky football team right now. Let's just put it that way. So I think Michigan State's got a great chance to upset them. We'll see how it goes. Clemson, Boston College, very, very interesting matchup because Clemson is a favorite by, again, almost 3 touchdowns. And it's one of those things that you look at and say, you know what, they've got a really great run defense because they've got all those great defensive linemen, all those NFL prospects. And you say to yourself, BC, they've got a great running back in A.J. Dillon, but he has a bum ankle. So there's uncertainty if he's going to play tonight. And if he doesn't play tonight, bye-bye BC. But if he plays tonight, I know people don't think of Chestnut Hill as the most difficult place to play. But, you got to remember Clemson, they're a Southern team. We don't know what the weather's going to be like in this game. BC's 5-0 at home. They love to run the ball. And the thing that impresses me is Boston College. They're a team that usually when we think of them, they're a team that usually struggles to score points. Kind of like talking about Michigan State, how defensive-minded team that doesn't score a whole lot of points consistently. This is a Boston College team that's averaging almost 40 points per game. They're averaging 37.2 right now. So they're a team that can move the football quite a bit. We saw what they did against Miami a while back. Had a tough one with Virginia Tech, but Anthony Brown, he's an athletic quarterback, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks. So he can do some things. He can run around a little bit. And then after Dillon, you got Ben Glines, who has 376 rushing yards, 5.6 yards a carry. He's actually considered technically a receiver, but he's 6'2", 230, has 9 catches and 3 touchdowns. So he can do some damage if Dillon can't go, but ideally you want both of those guys to go, and especially Dillon. I mean, Dillon, 250-pound back, but he's just so athletic, and he's such a game changer. Kind of reminds me of James Conner when James Conner was at Pitt, and obviously we see what he's doing now with the Steelers. But nonetheless, I think BC, it's pretty simple. You've got a decent passing game. You don't have a top flight receiver. Your top receiver has 20 catches. It's all about running the ball, playing keep away from this Clemson offense. Clemson, we know they can score pretty easily at will with Trevor Lawrence, tremendous freshman quarterback. So obviously playing keep away is a big, but again, you're going against a defense that only allows 90 yards per game. We saw this defense did have some troubles against Syracuse when they played earlier in the year, and then they tightened up. But that's really going to be the key because Clemson has only allowed 7 rushing touchdowns, 2.24 yards per carry. That 2.24 yards per carry, I'll repeat that again. And, the other side of it, Boston College averages 225 rushing yards per game. So 225 to 90.4, something's got to give there. You think about these guys, they got 32 sacks if you're Clemson, and you've only allowed 12. Charlie Campbell, who works for Walter Football, walterfootball.com. Charlie Campbell does a bunch of mock drafts, does one like every week, and his recent mock draft, Clellan Ferrell is in his latest mock draft is his 11th pick. Christian Wilkins is 21st pick. Dexter Lawrence is 27th pick, and then Austin Bryant, whose stock has fallen a little bit, he would be the 87th pick in his current mock draft. So that's 4 starting defensive linemen that he has going in the first 3 days of the draft out of Clemson. And they've got some younger linemen that have been playing a lot on the defensive side of the ball that have looked good as well. So that's going to be a big thing too is the pass rush, because you're a run-first team in BC, pass rush at Clemson will be neutralized a little bit. But again, it's how well can you run the football and how well can you play keep away from Clemson. Trevor Lawrence, really good year, 18 touchdowns, 3 picks. But Travis Etienne, running back, sophomore running back, I mean, he's a guy that a lot of people are really, really high on. He's only carried 116 times. He has 998 rushing yards, so he's just shy of 1,000. He's averaging 8.6 yards a carry and 15 touchdowns. So, on the ground, they average 265 yards a game. The Tigers do 7 yards per carry, just under 7 yards a carry, and 31 touchdowns. So 2 really amazing running teams, and I think the time possession battle, it's going to be interesting who can have as many long sustaining drives as possible, especially if we have some inclement weather, because this is a game where somebody could have a 35 minute to 25 minute time of possession edge and limit the possessions in this ball game and chew up clock, wear down the opposing defense and win this ball game. So on paper, I think you trust Clemson a little bit more, but I think both defenses could wear down a little bit. Clemson, 91% scoring in the red zone. So, I like Clemson a little bit more, but I still have a high score just because I think something's going to give. I think both teams have some big plays in them, and I think both teams will drive it down the field and score some touchdowns. And I think BC will have some pretty good success running against Clemson. So it's going to be a very, very interesting test for Clemson because, again, win or lose this game, let's say they get in the college football playoff, they're going to be challenged as far as stopping the run. And again, we know how talented their defensive line is, but it's a big, big test for them. So this is a really huge test for Clemson. I'm really intrigued to see how Clemson does. Clemson is usually a team that's a little bit better late in the year in recent years. I'm really intrigued by this matchup, but we'll see. I mean, that's a huge spread, almost 3 touchdowns. So really interested to see how that works out. But I think Boston College is going to give them a hell of a game and take them down the wire. Clemson, they've had a couple of tight games this year. We'll see. Washington State, they're at Colorado. Colorado's lost 4 in a row now. A lot of close competitive games, though. They lost at USC 31-20 a while back, at Washington 27-13. Lost to Oregon State, who's a struggling team, 41-34, and then at Arizona last week, 42-34. So, look at all those losses. I mean, they've lost a lot of tight games, but they just can't find a way to, close out these ball games and consistently, when you look at some of these losses, consistently score. And the main thing is their defense allows over 56% on third downs. They can't get off the field. So that's the main thing. You're playing a Washington State team. We know with Mike Leach's air raid offense, all the short passing, they thrive on the third and manageable situations. So for Colorado, really it comes down to, can you finally get off the field on third downs? And, they can keep pace, they can score points with Washington State, but can't get off the field on third downs. It really doesn't matter. With Washington State, it's interesting. They had that defensive struggle at home against Cal last week. They had that great final drive, and Gardner Minshew, now he's in the Heisman conversation. He's having a heck of a year. They lead the nation in percentage of passing plays. No surprise when you have Mike Leach as your coach, but 5-game winning streak, and Minshew right now just under 71% passing. Already has 465 attempts, so this is going to be their 10th game of the year, and he's about to cross 500 attempts for the season. 27 touchdowns, 7 picks, just under 400 yards a game at 390. And, their pass defense, they only allow 196 per game, 12 touchdowns and 7 picks through 9 games. That's impressive because, Colorado's got a pretty decent quarterback. Steven Montez, I watched him when he played SC. He's been their guy for a little while now, and he's a nice quarterback, but he doesn't really blow you away. He has 17 touchdowns, 5 picks, pretty decent amount of yards, 67.6% completion percentage, but I don't know. He's a nice quarterback, but he's not somebody who's really going to scare you. And even though Colorado has shown that they can keep pace the last couple of weeks, this Washington State defense is pretty darn good. And Washington State themselves, they average 90.7% red zone scoring, 79% touchdowns, 34 touchdowns. But then again, the red zone defense isn't very good. They allow 92.8% scoring, 67.8% touchdowns. So it could be very interesting. Colorado, 162 rushing yards a game. So Colorado obviously get off the field on third downs. Pass defense is really going to be tested in this one. By far your greatest challenge from that point of view. How do you create turnovers against a team like Washington State that gets rid of it so quickly, has the short passing? And that's going to be the real challenge for them. So finding a way to keep Washington State's offense off the field as much as possible is going to be key. And a couple of things I would look at if I'm Colorado, preparing for this game is, the second half of the Oregon game. Remember, Washington State at home was up 27-0. Oregon came back and made it 27-20 before Washington State scored late in the fourth quarter to put it away. So obviously just a touchdown in the second half. Offense was very inept. You have to study the second half of that tape if you're Colorado's defense. And then last week, against Cal's a pretty decent team, but Washington State at home only scored 19 with the last 6 coming on that final drive, and they scored late with less than a minute left, quick 2-minute drill. So Washington State's offense, for as powerful as they can be, we've seen a couple of teams recently that, for at least a stretch, can hold them in check. So if you're Colorado, can you hold Washington State in check for a couple of quarters, and can your offense do enough to, kind of get ahead and force Washington State to maybe play catch-up? So it's going to be a very, very interesting matchup there. And, it should be a pretty interesting game. But nonetheless, I got Washington State getting the win there. And like I said, I have them covering by a touchdown, 42-35. So pretty similar to the scores that Colorado's had the last couple of weeks. And then Bedlam, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State really impressed me a couple weeks ago with the Texas win. And then last week, played a real competitive back-and-forth game with Baylor, and Baylor beat them 35-31. So obviously a tough letdown for Oklahoma State. They're a 5-4 football team playing at Oklahoma. It's hard to win at Oklahoma. Bedlam, we know that Oklahoma has dominated the series. Kyler Murray right there in the Heisman conversation, obviously, but nonetheless, Oklahoma's a team that, like Oklahoma State, they don't play defense. Big 12, obviously, but they've had some scares. And, they're playing an okay Texas Tech team on the road last week. Back and forth game. Texas Tech had their chances to win it. Remember, they had beat Army in overtime earlier in the year. They had to come back from 3 touchdowns down in the fourth quarter just to tie Texas, and they ended up losing that game. They only lost for the year. So can't really trust Oklahoma's defense. Oklahoma State's defense is even worse. They give up about 30 a game, and Oklahoma themselves 27.9 to Oklahoma State's 29.9. So again, it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I have Oklahoma State winning 49-45. I think, again, just one of those things that the way Oklahoma's playing right now, just too many scary games where you're kind of saying they're not playing real great football for 4 quarters. They're doing enough late in the games to close it out, but I'm just wondering if maybe Oklahoma State has something for them. And again, rivalry game for Oklahoma State. I mean, this is kind of like your national championship. I mean, your season, 5-4. You're going to play an okay bowl game assuming you win out. You win at least one more game to become bowl eligible. So, big game for them. Taylor Cornelius does have 8 picks on the year, but Justice Hill, 895 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. Both of these teams have terrible pass defenses, about 250 yards a game allowed. Oklahoma only has 5 picks if they've allowed 14 touchdown passes. Oklahoma State's allowed 19 touchdown passes. Kyler Murray, like I said, Heisman conversation, 298.8 passing yards a game, 31 touchdowns, 5 picks, 574 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. Trey Sermon, 722 and 8 touchdowns. As a team, 246 per game, 26 touchdowns. So it's going to be a total shootout. And this is a game that legitimately very similar to what we saw last week with West Virginia and Texas. A very exciting game is who has the ball last. And I think Oklahoma State at home, they have the ball last. I think they're going to do something special and find a way to win this. So I'll go on a limb and say OSU wins it. Oklahoma is a big favorite at home. Oklahoma State is on the road, but I think even on the road, like West Virginia, they could do something really special if they get the ball last and pull this one off. So again, like Texas, West Virginia, like Oklahoma, Texas, whoever has the ball last might be the winner. Classic Big 12 shootout, we'll see. So it could be a tough one for OSU on the road, obviously, but I just think they're going to find a way to pull this off. I don't know. I just have a feeling about it. We'll see. My picks aren't the greatest. So, and then finally, Big Ten matchup, Iowa and Northwestern. And, Iowa, basically, mathematically, they're pretty much out of it as far as winning the West. Back-to-back losses. They lost 30-24 at Penn State and 38-36 at Purdue. So, road games haven't been their friends, but they're at home for this Northwestern game. Northwestern, obviously, just lost an emotional one at home against number 3 Notre Dame, 31-21. They had their chances in that one. Notre Dame scored late to put it away. And, it's interesting, Northwestern, they average 93 rushing yards a game, so they can't run the ball, which is so uncharacteristic of them. Clayton Thorson, their quarterback, 11 touchdowns and 10 picks. So, offensively, they're less than 25 points per game, and yet somehow they keep winning these games. They're leading the West, and right now they're in a situation, I don't want to mess this up, so let me read this off. So they're in a situation where if they win 2 of their last 3, they win the West. They're also in a situation where if they win today, against Iowa, and Wisconsin and Purdue both lose, then they win the West. So Northwestern has a lot at stake. I think there's no such thing as moral victories, but I think the way they played Notre Dame, even though they lost, I think they're going to come into this game with a lot of confidence. And, if you're Iowa, it's one of those things where you really don't have much of a leg up because, Nate Stanley, your quarterback, he struggled lately. Did pretty decent last week. Actually had 275 yards and a touchdown, but hasn't been real great overall lately, and he's starting to turn it over more. And on the ground, they average 157 rushing yards a game, so pretty decent rushing team, but nothing overly special. They only allowed 86 per game, so I like Iowa in this one because Northwestern already can't run the ball. Definitely not going to run against this defense. And one of those games where it's kind of like which quarterback screws up less. I know that sounds like a weird way to put it, but which quarterback screws up less? And Thorson, it's a toss up who's a better NFL prospect, because they're both, I think, NFL prospects to a certain extent. But I think Iowa has a little bit more receiver, especially when you think about tight end with Fan. So I think they have a little bit more to skill positions, and I think Thorson's going to be put in a position where he's going to have to force the ball a little bit more. So I think he might make a couple more mistakes. So definitely a game that's going to be about turnover battle and who can run it better. Iowa at home, they can run it a lot better, pass it a little bit better, turnover a little bit less. And yeah, this is one of those games where I could see Northwestern turning it over like 3 times, maybe Iowa only turns it over once. And that could be the big difference. And then, of course, the other thing, too, is, Northwestern, their pass protection is kind of iffy. And, it's one of those deals that Thorson, when he gets pressured, he can be forced into some more mistakes. And, of course, Iowa's sophomore pass rusher, A.J. Epinesa, he's been just pretty lights out since he arrived on campus last season, and he already has 7 sacks this year. They have 26 as a team, so that's another thing that could lead to a couple of the potential Thorson turnovers. So at the end of the day, I think Iowa at home is going to win the turnover battle, and they're just going to run the ball a lot better. And again, Big Ten game in November in Iowa City. Who knows what the weather's going to be like? So I just like Iowa a little bit better in this one. So Northwestern, you're going to have to do a lot in these last couple games if you lose this as far as winning the West. And if you're Iowa, this is a nice bounce back win. So anyways, that's my pick 6 for the week. Tomorrow I'm going to do a follow-up video reviewing how those picks actually turned out. Fingers crossed that it goes good this time around. I was like 500 last week. But anyways, that's my college football pick 6. My picks for the week for college football. So anyways, please go to sugarhuddle.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also like my Facebook page, which is the Sugar Huddle, and look out for more updates. Thanks.